Good evening, everyone. This is my third session here for Hillbilly Harbinger, and tonight I would like to address I guess it's more than one concern. To me, it's more about the use of certain wording, and for some reason it's got me a little bit aggravated. But before we get into that, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to the female Team Canada in the Olympics, getting the gold medal. And I'd like to send out a big boo to Bettman for not allowing our NHLers in Canada and the US to go to the Olympics. I really think that's a horrible decision. The Olympics is supposed to be about countries sending their best athletes, and definitely for the Canada and US, our best athletes for hockey is our NHLers. And I just thought that it really brought the overall quality of the Olympic hockey down to quite a low level. But anyways, again, I do want to say congratulations to our women on winning a gold medal. That's a great achievement. The other thing before we get into the topic that I would like to bring up is Hillbilly Harbinger has a new website. And it's www.hillbillyharbinger.ca. And on the website, you'll find all of these Facebook Lives will be there. There's other vlogs there. There's also blog articles there. And it's an interactive website, so you can leave comments, and I will check those things fairly regular. So anyways, for tonight's topic, I did want to tackle the use of certain wording, and I want to preface that I'm not although I'm talking about some of the wording that's happening in the Freedom Convoy, I'm not actually talking about being for or against the Freedom Convoy. I think for me, the reason I want to, words like freedom and tyranny and fighting for rights and stuff like that are being thrown around. And I think the reason it really bugs me is because, when I look at some of those topics and the use of some of those words, they have a massive context for me. And I think it has a massive context for me in two different situations. One of the situations that has a massive context for me is I grew up in a military family. My grandfather served during World War II. My father served in the militia. I have cousins that served in the militia. My best friend that I grew up with and is like a brother to me, served in the military overseas in active combat. And then the other thing is I'm a history buff, and I really do enjoy history. And so when I hear some of these words that are being used, I really feel that we need a reality check on what those words actually mean. And because I just find that those words are being used as kind of flamboyant, media impact type words. And I think, to me, it does an injustice to history. It does an injustice to our military people, by using some of those words. So I'd like to give an example. Let's start with the word freedom itself. And freedom, when we speak of that word, it's a condition in which people have the opportunity to, speak, to act, pursue happiness with unnecessary external restrictions. But, we also need to understand that freedom is important because it leads to, enhanced expression of creativity, original thought, increased productivity, and overall high quality of life. When you're fighting for freedom and using that term fighting for freedom, the key word we got to look at there is fighting. And that usually means that, we have to use military action due to some sort of imminent threat. And when I say imminent threat, trying to look at a mandate, regardless of what it is, that's not an imminent threat. Imminent threat is like what Hitler did during World War II when the entire world came together to fight that. And I think we need to understand that. Like, and it kind of goes to my point of, let's look at the difference between fighting for rights versus protest. Because protest is basically, it's a public expression or objection or disapproval, dissent towards some idea or action, and it's usually political. And I think it's important to understand that. Like, I have nothing but respect for the people who are protesting. I really do. Because protesting is one of the fundamental components of democracy. And, but let's be realistic. I mean, we can view these people as heroes for sure. I mean, they're standing up for something they strongly believe in. They're exercising our democratic right, which there's countries in this world that you cannot do that. And again, there's dissent towards ideas or actions, and that's protest. That is not the same thing as fighting for our rights. And I say that with actually a lot of, I don't want to say anger, but I guess just a lot of heavy heart, because, I've seen the impacts on very good friends, on family that have lost, people. I watched my grandfather, go through, alcoholism and stuff like that because of, memories and PTSD and things like that. I've got a good friend that lives here in Falkland that suffers from PTSD. Like, those guys and gals fought for our rights, fought for our freedom, because if it wasn't for them, we'd be living in a very different world right now, and true scariness would be unleashed upon us. So I think, I think that's probably why it gets stuck in my craw, is because, I hear words like freedom being used and, fighting for our rights. And I just guess for me, I don't see it on the same level. I have respect for both of those levels. I have respect for fighting for our rights, for what our soldiers go through, and I also have respect for people who protest. But to try comparing those two things, I think I don't like it when we're using words like freedom, because as you'll see as I talk through certain components, we really don't have it that bad in Canada. Now, one of the other things that I've noticed as well is people like to throw around the word tyranny. And tyranny, again, is one of these incredibly powerful words. Having a leader of a country that is maybe not making smart decisions, is maybe making absolutely stupid decisions, is maybe not treating I like the word that they always use, a segment of the people, which I think is BS. I don't care if it's one person or if it's 38 million people. The reality is a leader should address his people with respect. But that's not tyranny. And again, I think this is another flamboyant word that people are locking onto. And we need to understand that, like, tyranny is defined as severe or harsh treatment. Severe. Okay? Again, I hardly find, medical mandates, regardless of if they're correct or not, as being something severe. And the other thing is we need to understand that, like, an example of tyranny is putting someone in jail for many years for something that is an incredibly small crime, or another definition, of tyranny is a government or ruler with total absolute power. Okay. And when I say that, I mean, that's where we're talking about a country that's run by a dictator, and I get it. A lot of us feel that Trudeau is a dictator, but the reality is he's not actually a dictator. He makes some stupid decisions. He says some stupid things, but that's hardly a dictator. Tyranny would be like North Korea. If that convoy tried doing what they're doing right now in North Korea, there would be a very different outcome. Some would be killed and some would be locked away for life. That's tyranny. That is the purest definition of tyranny. So I think it's important for us to really understand, that when we use these words, they are flamboyant. They're used both sides, for and against, and media are using these words because it has an impact. But I think for me, I find it actually offensive. I really do. And again, it doesn't, my position's not for or against either side. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, I'm getting tired of it. But the reality is, I think we have to be very careful on the choices of words that we use, because there's countries out there that are watching us, and I get there's, protests happening all over the world. I think that's more just from 2 years of us being, suppressed, of us, having something said to us and then something different, with mandates coming out that make no sense, and then mandates that come out that just seem to be, super severe for one sector and not for the other, for conflicting information on the vaccines. I mean, I think the world's tired of it. And it's not just Canada, the world's tired of it. But again, for us to still use words like tyranny and freedom and fighting for rights, I mean, there's countries out there that are probably just shaking their heads at us going, I don't think you have any idea of what those things are. Come to our country and, we'll let you know what tyranny is, or we'll let you know of what loss of freedom is. One of the other things I always hear too as well is, like, people say, what's happening with our government right now is heading towards communism, is heading towards dictatorship. And it's like, I've been to countries that have communism. I've been to a country that experienced at one point in time tyranny, dictatorship as well too. But I think people need to understand, like, what really is communism, and if you think Canada is even close to communism, I'm sorry, but you're definitely out to lunch on that, and the rest of the world, and I'll bring up some information when I finish this off, that shows that, as Canadians, we're definitely out to lunch if we think that we're heading towards that aspect. So what are some of the key characteristics of communism? Well, the first thing is communism means a 100% abolishment of private property. It means that nobody can own property. The country belongs to the Communist Party. It belongs to, like in Russia, Mother Russia. Like, I own my house, I own my property. I mean, yeah, I got to mortgage it and pay it off, but I still own it. It's my private property. And a lot of people don't realize that in communist countries, there's a total abolishment of private property. One of the other things is collective ownership and means of production. So we can own businesses here, corporations, we can own, home-based business, everything like that. In communist countries, there's a collective ownership of that. So for us to sit back and say that, we think we're moving towards communism, like, these are big characteristics of communism, and we're not even close to that. And we're not even close to heading to that. Again, I think it's similar to the discussion I gave about the definition of tyranny and the definition of fighting for rights and the definition of freedom. Using these types of terminologies and saying, we're heading towards communism, we're going to have a dictatorship. Again, we need to understand that. So there's 2 points I brought up on communism. One is abolishment of private property. One is collective ownership and means of production. But the other one is central planning. And when I say central planning, it means that the government runs every aspect of life. And that's just not simply true. So I'll give you an example. In a communist country, if they decided that let's just use the COVID-19 vaccine. In a communist country, you're told to take it. And if you don't, they will come and arrest you and make you take it. Whereas in Canada, we do have a choice. We have if I had the choice and I want to go get the poke, I'd go get it. But I also have the choice to not get it. Now, I understand there's repercussions to that, and sometimes that feels unfair. And I think actually some of it was just BS, of what did happen. And again, like I said, this isn't an argument for or against, but what I'm trying to show is what it would be like to be in a true dictatorship or communist country versus, what the reality is here in Canada and what we perceive as being impacts on all those things to the reality of what countries that are experiencing those things are. So that's what central planning means. Like the government basically in communist countries, they lay the law down and that's it. There's no argument. There's no process to overturn it. There's no such thing as unfair. That is how it works. Do we have stuff like that in Canada? No, not at all. If you understand our legislative processes and, decision processes and stuff like that, there is ways around it. We're seeing that right now. Like I do think the Freedom Convoy is having some impact because since it's happened, we're starting to see provincial and federal governments starting to, loosen up. And I'm sure, they're going to come around and say, oh, well, it's because of this and it's because of that. I mean, we all know the reality is that, it's having an impact. That would not happen in a communist country at all. That kind of behavior would be abolished instantly. And like I said, it would result in, lifetime sentences in prison, or they take you out back and you get shot by a shooting squad. That's just the way it happens. And that's why I said, there's people sitting in those countries going, really, Canada, you think that's what you have? It's not even close. The other thing about communism is and dictatorship is there's what they call an elimination of unfair gaps in income. And I know that sounds like an awesome thing, but it's really not, because basically the country sets the price you get paid at. And if you think we'd be making the kind of money we're making right now on minimum wage, it wouldn't even be close. And that's one of the parts of communism is you don't really have any control to even, have wealth. And that's why when you look at a lot of communist countries and you get in behind the scenes of North Korea and Russia, there's a lot of poverty. There is a lot of poverty. There is a lot of unemployment, and that's because, again, that elimination of gaps in income is there. And then one of the last kind of key components of communism as well, too, is what they call provisions of necessities of life. And you see, for me, I can set what's priorities in my life of what I think is important and what I want to do. In communist countries, that's set by the country itself. You are the one that has the provisions and necessities set for you on your life. And when I say life, it doesn't mean live or die. I mean, but what we're essentially talking about is, the freedom of choice. You don't really have freedom of choice in your own life. You have to do specific things. And I think for what upsets me about this whole thing is when we're using COVID and saying that, they're dictating, well, they're not really, they are dictating to a certain extent some components based around COVID. But in communist countries, it's dictated on everything that you do, and you have no choice at all on those matters. So let's really I'm going to recap those 5 things because, again, I want people to really think about this. So when you're talking about comparing us moving towards communism, that's abolishment of your private property, that's collective ownership, a means of production, that's, central planning, that's elimination of unfair gaps of income and provision of necessity of life. And I'll tell you right now, folks, we're not even close to communism, and we're not, it's just ridiculous for us to compare those things, and it's the same thing. If you look at a lot of comparisons see people bring up is the rise of the German Empire and, how they did it. And I really encourage you, look into how, leaders like Hitler did it. It definitely wasn't over a virus. I mean, I would say that if that was the plan of Canada to take over our country and to go to communism and go to dictatorship, boy, they really haven't studied their history and understanding of how to do that. And the reality is it's, it's an incompetent government that's dealing with a pandemic and, has quite frankly made a mess of it. And now you're going to see, and I'll tell you right now, over the next 2 to 3 months, you're going to see a lot of backpedaling of them, trying to get us out of this thing and put it in the past. And the only thing I hope is people don't remember how Trudeau was as a leader in this. So in the next election, let's get him out. And usually I'm not political that way, but it has to be said. Again, I want to stress people, the reason, I've gone over, some of these definitions of the word freedom and, the word tyranny and, fighting for rights versus protest and, talking about the characteristics of communist systems is because I'm really hoping people think deeply about these things. And I'd really like to stop seeing that language being used. Again, I 100% support both concepts of fighting for rights versus protest. I think both are 100% necessary. One is to protect our freedoms, and the other is to protect our democracy. And those are fundamentally two different things. And again, I think the reason it kind of got under my is because, through history and through my life of people that I cherish, I've seen real fighting for our rights. People giving up their lives to take out dictators, to take out real tyranny. And I think to compare protest to that, even though I understand there's veterans there, I think it's an absolutely horrible thing to compare those things to being the same two levels. It's an injustice. So you've heard me talk about why I want to show this, and I don't know if people realize this, but there's a ranking system that's used throughout the world that is done by an organization called Freedom House. And what they do is they look at all aspects of government, all aspects of legislative process, all aspects of human rights, all aspects of everything that deals with freedom, and things like that. And they put it through a ranking system. And they look especially at two things, which is political rights and civil liberties across territories. And they assess 210 different countries in the world, and they rank them basically on what country has the most freedoms in this world. And I encourage you, look this up. The number one country that takes the top spot for being the most free in the world is Canada. So this is why I'm saying, we really need to be honest with ourselves on this. I know we want to make an impact. I know I'm the same as everybody else. I'm frustrated. I'm confused. I'm mad about the whole COVID-19 thing. I'm tired of being suppressed for the last 2 years. I'm tired of having mandates that make no sense. I'm even tired of going and getting poked. At first I was told one shot would give my immunity. And then you find out, well, it's not really, it's more a vaccine that just helps you to fight it. And then I got to do 2 shots, and then I got to do 3 shots, and it might be boosters and whatever. The mismessaging is very frustrating, and I get that. And am I tired of it? Darn rights I am. Am I tired of the confusion? Darn rights I am. But I think it doesn't do any justice to history. It doesn't do any justice to the rest of the world when, as Canadians, we start throwing around all these words, and everybody in the world realizes that Canada is one of the most, well, according to Freedom House and the assessment of 210 countries, we are considered the most free country in the world. So that's my topic, folks. I know I didn't really get to market this one too much. I do appreciate the people that did join me tonight. If there's any questions, please type them in the comment column. If they come up right away, I'll make sure to address them now. But if not, I'll make sure I just address them by comments. Again, I think the key thing to take away from this is think about it. In the rankings of 210 countries in the world, Canada is ranked number 1 as being the most free based on political rights and civil liberties. So although we feel our problems are huge here in Canada, compared to the rest of the world, it's not. And I think that's something we need to understand, that there is people in this world that are fighting real fights for rights, that are fighting real freedom, that would love to have what we've got. And, we should be thankful for it. Again, I'm still saying go out and protest. I mean, that's a great thing about democracy, but let's be realistic about what this is about, and not get crazy and flamboyant and make it sound like it's more than what it really is. So if there's no comments, everyone, I'd like to wish everybody a great evening. Thank you very much again for joining me. And again, if you've missed this, it'll be on Facebook Live on the Hillbilly Harbinger Facebook page, but it'll also be posted onto the YouTube page as well so that you can watch it again later. And I really do encourage you, leave some more comments. I love to engage in healthy debate, healthy discussion, or even if it's something that you would like to know. If I don't know it, I'll definitely research into it or find somebody that does. So have a good evening, everybody. And, let's just remember to keep talking.